table full up here of women, wine, women, and weed, huh? It's gonna be great. So this is a session that really came about, I think, for us. There were so many women from the cannabis industry that stepped up when we first started this, because the first wine and weed symposium was really just purely about trying to educate our wine industry audience, right? Because that's really what we do, about what was happening in cannabis. And it was interesting because we had done a little something in the beverage category. We tried to do like a beverage show, and we had already been doing wine for quite some time. And we're on the East Coast, so we reached out to some whatever friends that we had in the craft beer industry and in the craft spirits industry, and about, hey, come on, let's do this thing together. It's great. We share the same suppliers. We have a lot of the same problems, and they were super polite about it, but they were basically like, we have our own deal, and good luck. I was like, okay. And so when we started the pursuing this idea of having this wine and weed symposium, I fully expected to get the same reaction from the people in the cannabis industry that we reached out to, but it was completely the opposite, especially with the women that we approached. And they were incredibly enthusiastic about supporting us and being a part of, not only being a part of the panel, but helping us recruit speakers. And there was a big percentage of them that came out of the wine industry. And so when we were thinking about this year, I thought, let's put together kind of a fun panel and just talk a little bit about their experiences, the similarities, the differences, and just sort of have a little bit of fun with this final session for the day. And then, of course, after this, we're going to have a little bit more wine and food out there, right? Which was like typical wine event, right? Just too much of everything. So we're really lucky to have Marcia Gagliardi, Gagliardi. She made me practice too, and I was like, I know I'm going to screw this up. Who's the founder of My Milligram and Table Hopper, to moderate this session. So Marcia, I'll let you take it from here. And thank you so much for being here, and thank all you guys for being here as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I know, my name is a mouthful. I've gone through my life as Marcia Gagliardi, and I'm like, she's like my alter ego. We don't like her. So when I was invited to moderate this panel, I was like, really? Women, wine, weed? Yes. It's kind of like my perfect Venn diagram, and Zen diagram. So I launched My Milligram a year ago, a little bit about me. It is a media brand that is all about low-dose cannabis use and educating people about microdosing, how to explore cannabis for wellness, feeling good, sleeping better, and also just really trying to help people feel comfortable with the plant, whether they maybe had a bad experience in the past and it's time to get to know new cannabis. Or people who just, like my mom, who have never had anything and want a safe guide to lead them through some products and feeling good. So it's been an amazing journey, been hosting events, educational events. I just launched my first video for My Milligram, so there will be more coming in that space. And a lot of people though know me for Table Hopper, which is a newsletter. I've been writing about the San Francisco food scene for 13 years. And that's like dog years, though. It'd be like 80, I'm like 80, my column is 85 years old. And on statins. I've been covering the Bay Area with, restaurant gossip and news, and it's been a really exciting career. I've been boss of me for 20 years. And it's a lot of extra hustle, but for me, it's worth it. And I certainly enjoy all the women I get to work with in the field. And cannabis has been so exciting for me as a woman. I have to tell you, I have never felt so supported by fellow women in this industry, in this business. It's really exhilarating. So this panel means a lot to be here today, to be moderating. So let's meet our fabulous ladies, shall we? So to my left here, we have Rachel Birkins, the co-owner of Altered Plates, but she's got an incredible background. I think, I'll just introduce each of you as we go along. So Rachel, why don't you tell us about you, darling?
Sure. Ooh, sorry, guys.
It's hot. That mic is hot. Like you, lady.
Yeah, you know it. So as Marcia said, my name is Rachel Birkins. I am the co-founder of a culinary cannabis company based out of Los Angeles, but we do stuff all over, called Altered Plates. And I do come to the world of cannabis after 12 years in the realm of wine and spirits publishing. I worked for a company called M-Publishing, which many of you may know, printed the Tasting Panel and Somm Journal. Those actually are still printing. Pardon that. The Tasting Panel and Somm Journal, which are trade publications for the wine and spirits industry. And in 2015, M-Publishing launched a third title called The Clever Root, which is no longer being printed, but but that one really was designed to, I know, was designed to bring together food, wine, and cannabis. And it was really a little bit ahead of its curve and time in terms of tackling that conversation. But after, at that point, it had been 10 years in the wine and spirits industry, and I had worked with suppliers and distributors and sommeliers and mixologists and sort of touched every level of the wine and spirits industry in doing event marketing and definitely a lot of storytelling, given that it was a wine and spirits publication. And my brother, who is my business partner in Altered Plates, he's a chef and a cultivator and a ganjier. But at that time, he was just a stoner. And I was like, hey.
Stoner 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, hey, we're headed up to Humboldt to launch the Clever Root. And he and I took a road trip and smoked many joints in the Redwoods and got up to Humboldt to attend an event called the Golden Tarp Awards. And we were like, wow, there's an industry to this industry. And that was in late 2015. And on that long drive back to the Oakland airport, there were more joints and more redwoods, but there was also a lot of conversation about how we could take that and bring it to Southern California and bring a little bit of a culinary cannabis industry together. So in the middle of 2016, we launched Altered Plates, and that has really been our goal ever since, to elevate the cannabis hospitality realm. So we started primarily in the private dining space and then transitioned into a lot of brand work, recipe development, collaborating with all sorts of brands in the cannabis space. And of course, seeing some friends from the wine space and spirit space along the way, which is really cool. But now my recent sort of turn with this business and my current passion and what I'm really trying to advocate for in cannabis is the on-site consumption space and focused on what will the future of cannabis restaurants look like? We had the opportunity to consult on one of the winning applications for the City of West Hollywood on-site consumption lounges. So I've spent a ton of time really examining how do we bring cannabis on premise? How do we bring a joint versus a vape versus an edible product to the consumer in that sort of environment? And the real onus on that is elevating the level of education and hospitality that is connected to that. So that's what I'm all about. That's what I'm here to push forward, and that's me in a nutshell.
Fabulous, thank you. If you ever get a chance to attend one of their dinners, whenever they're hosting,
Tonight.
That's right. How many are doing the Sonoma dinner tonight? Fabulous, in for a treat.
Welcome to your first Altered Plates experience.
May there be many. Next, we have the fabulous Liz Gell, founder and chief recruiter of Gell Search Partners. Talk to us, darling.
Hi, so I'm Liz Gale, founder and chief recruiter for Gale Search Partners. I call myself chief recruiter because I'm crazy like that and I love the hunt. So I always make sure that I'm at least partially involved in every search. So my story is a little bit different in that youngest of 14 kids, was offered cannabis by older siblings when I was way too young to actually partake. So it was almost one of those things where I was like, oh, I don't know. So literally on my 18th birthday is when I tried cannabis for the first time. And then when year of graduation of high school, we went medicinally legal and became passionate about the product in my early 20s because of anxiety and other things. And funny enough, I was actually in human resources. So I was rescinding job offers and telling people that they couldn't come work for us because they used cannabis, and I was going home and using cannabis. So as a very transparent and open person, that was very awkward. But with that, I never dreamed I would be able to utilize my experience in human resources and in cannabis. But that's helped quite a bit, coupled with my experience in retail HR operations, as well as going into the wine industry and spirits industry as well, working for Brown-Forman and then Treasury Wine Estates. My passion for the adult bev industry, specifically wine, is definitely there as well. So I saw a lot of parallels in terms of where the cannabis industry was heading. How do we get this incredible product that needs to be regulated in some form, or will be, I should say, to the masses? Obviously, the 3-tier distribution system was already set up in adult bev, and I had a very, very strong understanding and passion for that. So in 2016, already seeing kind of on the horizon where recreational cannabis was probably becoming legal. I knew I was going to go out on my own, but wasn't quite sure about the timing. And I knew that adult bev industry recruiting would be part of my niche. But I was managing a talent acquisition team, and one of my recruiters had just recruited an incredibly talented female winemaker that would have been just an incredible person to add to our team. And basically she called the night before her drug screen and said, I don't use cannabis for anything else but for sleep. I don't like Ambien. And as many of us have heard, Ambien makes people do some crazy things. Right? So I'd much rather eat an edible before I go to bed. You won't catch me high at any other time. And I had to take that to legal counsel. I will say I do not fault legal counsel at my former company whatsoever. They did exactly what they needed to do. But the response was, sorry, Liz, rescind the offer. If they can't pass a drug screen, medical card or not, we're a highly regulated industry, sorry. I'll never forget sitting in that meeting because I'm like, there's more people like me. There's more people like her. We use cannabis instead of other medicines, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've never fit the stigma. I'm incredibly driven, high energy, little crazy, like I said. So, for me, cannabis is something that I truly use as medicine. It's also recreational, but I see it no differently than a glass of wine. So if there's more people like me and there's people like her, then I'm sure there's a niche out there. There's people that aren't open to speaking up because they're in fear of losing their job or other things. So at that point, I decided, hey, been through a major acquisition, have done a lot of things here at this company, and I see an area where I can really help not only the wine and adult beverage industry, but the cannabis industry in terms of bringing in some people that have experience from other industries and really, I don't want to use the word professionalize or anything like that because the cannabis industry has been amazing for many, many years, but making it more so where it's bringing it out of the stigmatization that we've allowed. So in that, my firm focuses mostly on mid-level to senior level, C-level, and board of director placement. A lot of our placements have come from the adult beverage industry, a lot of wine, given my network. And I wish I could say this, I've done this purposely, but 70% of our placements in cannabis have been women. So, yeah. Yes. So very proud of that. Like I said, I wish I could say I did that purposely, but there's a reason why there's so many successful women in weed that have come from wine. So happy to be here.
Fantastic. I'm loving these stories. Keep talking. We have Stephanie Honig here, and she is the Director of Sales and Communications with Honig Vineyard and Winery. I wish we had some Sauv Blanc right now.
I know, I'm sorry.
Where's the bottle here? We need our ice bucket.
Yeah. A good marketing opportunity.
Okay, tell us about you.
Well, thank you. So now I know why I wasn't introduced to cannabis sooner. I'm an only child. They didn't have the 13 siblings to introduce me to it. So I am probably the only one here that is actually not in the cannabis industry. My job and livelihood is the wine business, and that's not changing, but I am obviously I'm a strong believer in legalizing in cannabis cultivation and retail, and and making it accessible and clean, and that's how I got involved. So we're the third generation of the Honig family. We're in Rutherford and Napa. We make Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon. I used to live in New York, worked for Veuve Clicquot, grew up in Argentina, made a wine in Argentina, so I have a strong wine background. A few months ago, a good friend, well, no, more than a few months ago, almost 2 years ago, actually. It's like time flies.
That's cannabis right there.
Yeah. He came to me, and someone I respect very much, and said, he comes from the wine business, but told me he was starting a cannabis company, vertically integrated cannabis company, and shortly after asked me if I would co-found the Napa Valley Cannabis Association with them. And I looked at him and I said, I don't smoke weed. I don't know anything about that industry. I don't know anything about the space. Like, it doesn't matter. You're in marketing, you're progressive, you believe in it. And, well, it's a longer story. But anyway, I believe in making things accessible, because I feel like when you make them illegal, they're misused and abused. And that comes from where, when I grew up in Argentina, people, the drinking age was 18, but if you wanted to have a beer while you were in high school, you could. And then when I moved here and everybody was getting wasted, I didn't get that. I was like, well, why? So we started this organization. Napa County still does not allow commercial cultivation of cannabis. So I don't know if he's still here, Zach, who was in the previous panel, but I've heard he said it, and I've heard it before of, Mendocino or Humboldt County want to become the Napa of cannabis. I'm like, but Napa should be the Napa of cannabis, right? So, my understanding is that all these, the reason why we make the wines we make, because of the terroir and the cool nights and the fog and the long dry growing season, are really beneficial to cannabis growing too. So we really wanted to implement what Prop 64 was intended to do in 2016. So we've been working really hard writing an ordinance we wrote an ordinance for the Board of Supervisors of the county to work on, and they have not wanted to work on it. So then we worked with land use attorneys to turn that ordinance into ballot. So it's a ballot initiative, and we have now filed it, and it was amazing. So we hired a company to go out and gather signatures, and the company, the signature gather people said that it would probably take them, they forecasted it would take them 40 days to gather the signatures they needed, and they were done in 7 days. So it was a record. I mean, it was amazing. So now we're on the ballot, and it's a fascinating process. We're still trying to get them to act, but there's a short window of when we can pull it from the ballot, and if not, we won't. So it's been a really fun process. So that's what I'm working on.
Fantastic. Keep it up. We have Tracy Mason, who is the co-founder and CEO of the House of Saka, which maybe you noticed their card on our tables at lunch. Thank you for feeding us today.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to future beverages with you too. So
And we'll have to feed you after the beverages, of course, because you'll be hungry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hi. I've always wanted to say that in front of a group of people that it's all about weed, right? So is it really a greeting or is it really a question? Are you? Are you? I'm not. But my name is Tracy Mason. I am, as beautifully articulated by Marcia. I'm kidding. Just joking.
You're hilarious.
That's right. I am the co-founder and CEO of House of Saka. We are a line of luxury products that have been created by and for women in the cannabis space. Our first products, which are cannabis-infused, Napa Valley-inspired infused beverages, because we can't say wines, are launching this fall, and we're really excited about it. And I came into the space after being in the wine and spirits industry for almost 30 years. That was way before child labor laws were in place. So just to be clear about that, I started 30 years ago, but it was a long time ago. And I've seen the industry change over that period of time. Not only have we brought more consumers in, and the interest in wine has gone up, The way in which we've branded wine and the way in which we've gone to market has changed. And as I went from sort of a sales position into a marketing position and into innovation, new product development, that was really focused ruthlessly on who is our target consumer. And we talked about in our earlier panel about need states and what is that consumer looking for. And so I think that gave me a great background as I started to think about what would my next move be. And I think for all of us who have been in any industry for any length of time, you get to a point of saturation where your mental capacity is such that you know you can do your job, and it becomes so easy that it's not fun anymore. And so I started, when I hit kind of a milestone birthday.
30.
That's right. Thank you. God bless. I am so, you and I. When I hit kind of a milestone birthday, I decided that what is the next thing for me? And in sort of the way the universe works, I was approached by a former colleague of mine who was on the board of advisor of a new startup called House of Saka. It was actually called Saka at the time. We brought in the House of Saka thing after I started. And they were looking for a female CEO who understood the wine industry, who also was pretty entrepreneurial. And I've been involved with several startups, none of which, by the way, have succeeded. So please don't take that as what's going to happen with Saka. There's got to be something in there somewhere. And I met with Cynthia, who's my co-founder, and I was blown away by the branding. Because ultimately, what drives everything that we do and everything that we buy is brands. And it's what speaks to you, how does it speak to you? And the notion of House of Saka, which is inspired by an ancient group of female warriors who were known to use cannabis in their rites of passage and in their ancient rituals, and they conquered all they desired. And for me, that notion of females coming in and owning a space and owning a consumer was really powerful. And so we assembled an amazing board of all-female advisors. We have an all-female leadership team. And we started to think about the consumer and who is coming into cannabis, and recognizing that it's really women who look like me, who are walking into dispensaries, who are looking for something that solves everyday issues, whether that's anxiety or whether that's depression or whether it's just some level of socialization that doesn't have the negative effects that alcohol has. And so in founding House of Saka and working, kind of walking that path and bringing it from an idea on a piece of paper to launching December 15th, 2019, look for it. I've discovered quite a bit. And what I have discovered that, as a female in this industry that has fought that fight, has fought it so hard every step of my journey, it doesn't stop once you enter cannabis. You're still going to deal with the same level of misogyny and the same level of people trying to tell you no or put your voice down. Don't listen, because there's so much power in not listening. And so House of Saka is about that. And so I hope you all, when it comes to market in a month or two, I hope you'll try it and recognize that that's really the voice behind it. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. 7:15. I hope you all had a little bit of chocolate at some point today, because we have one of my favorite chocolate pushers here. Harley Warner, the co-founder and VP of Marketing and Communications for Garden Society. Talk to us, darling.
Thank you. Are the microphones working? Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be up here on this stage with this amazing group of women. There is nothing more empowering than being surrounded by your peers, and especially women who are building something from, really with their own two hands. So I'm honored to be on this stage with all of you. Erin and I founded Garden Society back in 2016. I began my career actually in the wine industry, so have 10 years previous wine industry experience doing public relations and communication with some boutique PR firms, in addition to with Constellation Brands, which I'm sure many of you are well aware of. I grew up in what I call a hippie household, which I'm sure my parents are quite tired of me saying at this point, but my dad smoked pot, and I was what I call a reverse rebel, and kind of dug my heels in and said, I'm not drinking, I'm not smoking, I'm gonna go play music and get a scholarship and be a musician, and that's what I went off and did. And then when I got to college, I was like, oh wow, actually, wine and weed are pretty fun. So I actually ended up going into the wine industry, as I mentioned, and something that drew me to wine was this idea that It starts in the ground. It starts with the farmer. You have this beautiful plant that is nurtured. You have the stewards of the land. And it then goes through the process of becoming a fixture on some of the finest tables in the world. So it really spans this beautiful process of coming from the earth, but then it's served by these master sommeliers across the world. And I think that's a really neat story to tell. And that's what really drew me to that. I love to tell stories. So, throughout my career, I did experience some, kind of dabbling with cannabis. My husband was diagnosed with lymphoma several years ago, and through his chemotherapy, we actually ended up growing cannabis so that he could use that to help as a therapeutic aid through the chemo. And he actually ended up started growing under Prop 215. So that was my first sort of intro to the cannabis industry. Fast forward later in my career at Constellation, I ended up meeting a man named Tom Gore, who is a vineyard director for Constellation, and we built a wine brand based on the farmer, and it was based on Tom, so Tom Gore Vineyards. Through that process, I had the delightful pleasure of meeting my partner, Erin. We had a fun, frivolous night at the Nomad Hotel back when I used to get to expense nights there on Constellation's dime. Now we stay at Best Westerns. And so Erin and I had a lot of fun. We were both sort of corporate career women, building our repertoire as, in careers. And we found out that we both enjoyed smoking cannabis. And it was kind of like, oh, cool, another girl like me. Because typically I was smoking with my husband and his buddies. So she and I kind of lost touch over the last couple of years before we started founding Garden Society. I, after years of difficulty, had my daughter in 2016. Come to find out, Erin also was having a lot of fertility problems, and she left her job in 2016, and kind of this simultaneous path of finding herself, Erin started building Garden Society. And in September of 2016, reached out to me to join her on this journey, and I am forever thankful. At the time, I was like, all right, I'll come on board, but I'm only working 2 days a week. I'm working on being a stay-at-home mom, and very quickly that turned into a full-time partnership. Something that drew me to this entire idea of building Garden Society is Erin would host these high holiday baking parties with her girlfriends, and it was a way for them to prepare for the in-laws, okay? So you're going into the holidays, you bake your baked goods, you add in the cannabis, and you're ready for the in-laws. And throughout that process, she realized that there were many, many women out there that were dealing with the same problems that we were. So high stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of internal pressure, a lot of external pressure, being a good wife, being a good mom, being a good employee, all of those things. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as women, and there's statistics to show that. And so with Garden Society, we're building a cannabis lifestyle brand to bring quality products to women. So we make beautiful chocolates with a full spectrum cannabis input, so you get a really nice, beautiful experience and effect from that. And we also have our rosette pre-rolls. So I'll end that there.
Yeah, hopefully you all had a chance to visit the table. And so we're gonna dive in here. Rachel, coming back to you. So I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you're appreciating more about your experience as a woman in the cannabis industry versus your extensive time in the wine industry?
There are a lot of things. And I mean, even just looking out at this room, I think is one of them. There are so many women here, which I love, and I love celebrating. In my time in the wine world, I used to always call it dudes in suits, like just dudes in suits. And and just to see, yeah. So, no offense to the gentlemen out there. It's nice to see so many ladies. And it's nice to see so many powerful, strong women out there. So that's one thing I really definitely love about being in the cannabis space. But also in general, it's also new. And it's all changing so quickly, which is, of course, part of the headache that everybody goes through, and keeping up with the regulatory changes and compliance has been a nightmare for a lot of people. But, specifically in terms of what I'm doing and what I'm talking about with the on-site consumption of cannabis, this literally does not exist. So to be able to create an on-premise experience for the guest, I think is a whole new world that the world of cannabis is looking to tap into. And that could be said across a variety of different pieces of this industry. And as technology continues to evolve, and as we are still emerging from this prohibition-minded era where everybody is sort of secretive and nobody's collaborating because everybody's afraid, I think that there is a lot of growth opportunity. And the world of wine, sure, there are innovations happening there, but it's a lot of marketing. And, there's some real change happening on the ground in cannabis, and I really appreciate being able to be a part of that as well as support other people as they are growing their businesses.
Great, and feel free to chime in with any of these questions, ladies, if you have some observations. So Carly, in the years that I've known you, because it's been fun to know you in the wine world and the weed world, but you are a very astute observer of both worlds. And I'd love to hear from you, where do you see opportunities for women in cannabis versus the wine industry?
Sure. I mean, drawing from my own personal experience, working at Constellation was an incredible positive experience. I was actually on the public relations team, which was almost all women. So I was very lucky in that sense. However, I never really saw where my future was held in terms of growth within a big corporation like that. It's somewhat intimidating. There are a lot of suits. You have to go down, to really grow within a company like that, you have to be down in San Francisco. So coming up here, that's not very family friendly, having a commute like that. So I see a lot of opportunity, and what we're doing at Garden Society is the opportunity to build a business that has sort of a feminine-centric culture. So things like flexible schedules, part-time, having a work-life balance. I see a lot of opportunity there. I also see a lot of opportunity for innovative business models and innovative products that are directed toward women, and the authenticity that a woman brings when they're building a brand or building a product. They have the opportunity to then fill a gap or fill a need. It was interesting hearing them talking about need states in the last panel, because I do think that's very relevant to what we're doing in cannabis. I think there's also the opportunity to really finally break that glass. Oops.
The glass ceiling, we're breaking it all day.
Glass ceiling. There aren't a lot of C-suite roles out there yet, so there's the opportunity to take that and build a C-suite role for yourself in a company. There's the opportunity, there's a lot of big companies being built out there, and as a woman, I say, do your research, read about, who's building what, read about who's raising money, who's making money, and go in there with a proposal. And whether it's contract work or full-time position, I think there's opportunity to even create your own space within established companies in addition to just creating your own innovative brand. And then finally, I think there's opportunity for women to run for office and to kind of, become a public servant and help build the regulations around cannabis in a way that maybe there wouldn't have been otherwise. So even what Stephanie's doing with building, the Napa Cannabis Group, and sorry, I blanked on the name for a second there. Sorry.
I'm not running for office though.
But just in terms of being a public servant or driving change, driving regulations. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Awesome, thank you. And so Liz, tell me what you're noticing in staffing requirements for cannabis jobs. It ties into that. What's different for women in cannabis industry?
So I love what Carly just said, because let me start with saying there are a lot of opportunities for women in the cannabis industry, but let's not gloss over the fact that there's still some old school things happening in cannabis too, just like adult bev. One of the things that I always noticed about the wine industry in particular is, the leaders at corporate would say, Liz, you need to make sure your team brings in more women leaders. Okay, it's adult bev. You guys didn't let women carry a bag or be in a senior leadership role until recently. So if you want somebody who has 15 years of experience and is a woman, am I supposed to make them up? Right? And that was a really interesting thing, is there's a constant need for senior level executives who are women in the industry to take these positions. However, we didn't give women the opportunity until the last 10, 15 years. So in cannabis, you can take that industry experience that you've learned in wine or spirits or beer, and it's so relatable in terms of the regulatory and all of the things you need to be able to do. You're resilient. You can spin on a dime. Oh, that state won't let me do that. So, how else can I be creative and make this program work? How else can I sell, and partner with other licensees, right? You guys already know how to do all of that. So that's what's so incredibly important to come into senior level roles into the cannabis industry is because we're building the industry, there are a ton of companies out there that actually come to my firm and say, we really want to have a woman leader. So to Carly's point, like if you're a woman who's in a senior level role, reach out to me. If you're interested in getting into cannabis, because I have a lot of client companies who are saying, if they're a VP in a wine company, yes, we will make them a C-level executive if they have the right skill set. Now, with that being said, we still have a little bit of bro culture going on in cannabis. Not all companies are progressive. So, I don't want to make it seem like there's a ton more opportunity in cannabis. There are a lot more opportunities, but there still are companies out there who are choosing to put women in scantily clad clothing to advertise their cannabis brands. Those are companies that Gale Search Partners does not partner with. However, there are a lot of other companies that will, and so that's continuing to progress and continuing throughout the industry. However, again, my firm in particular, we really focus on those individuals and those company founders who see it's a feminine plant, a feminine leader, knows how to be resilient. And again, I'm stereotyping, but typically the response I get is, I want a woman because you guys are creative. You're able to juggle multiple things, multiple tasks. You don't get flustered if there's a last minute change. It's okay. What else do we do? Let's go to
pivot.
Let's go to plan B. Let's go to plan C. Let's go to plan D. Not oh shit, right?
It's all over.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And so there is a ton of opportunity. But whether you're a man or a woman looking to get into the cannabis industry. I would really say it's being resilient, it's being able to pivot on a dime, it's being creative, and being able to operate in the gray. If you're somebody who needs it to be black and white, sorry, not a lot of that right now. And you can want that, and you can drive for, and strive for that, but you need to be really aware that you need to be flexible, and you need to be somebody who other people want to be around and work with, despite all the challenges. So.
Great input, thank you. And it's interesting also just seeing, how many people are coming over from the wine industry and marketing and branding into cannabis. And so Stephanie, I'd love to hear from you on the inverse. What can the cannabis industry learn from the wine industry about marketing and branding?
Well, the wine industry is so much more established, obviously, in the cannabis industry. And when we think about wines or spirits or any alcoholic beverage, we immediately think of brands. Chardonnay, for example.
Cheers to that.
But you think of, Tito's and Opus One and Schaefer and, whatever brand we speak of. And in cannabis, Garden Society is a perfect example. It's a brand that I think has done an amazing job, and it's like one of the very few ones I know, and I love it. But there's a lot to be done in branding and brand development. And I was in a dispensary the other day. I was in Nevada, and a few days ago, and I was asking the guy, helping me, and what's the difference, and indica and sativa, and this makes me feel like this, and this makes my wife feel like this, and this is what I use this for, but I really didn't understand the difference of the tiers and who they were targeting and why I should buy one over the other. So I think that's a huge lesson and what they're doing is a perfect example. They're targeting women. So really identifying the demographic and the price point, and if you're a luxury or if you're an everyday. So I think there's a huge lesson there. In this country, the only other product that we have successfully marketed to consumer product as a responsible product is alcohol, and we're doing the same with cannabis. So I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from marketing. Also, as a mother of four, it's a a huge concern. I want my kids to learn how to drink responsibly and use cannabis responsibly. And then the truth in labeling is especially with millennials. Everybody, but you see it more with millennials where they really want to understand where the product's coming from, what they're putting in their bodies, the authenticity behind it. And so I think there's, our bottles say Sauvignon Blanc, Napa Valley. We tell you how much alcohol is in it. So when you look at a cannabis label, you want to understand that too. So
Totally. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, Tracy, you're deep in this world right now of, I think it's fascinating that you have this hybrid experience of launching a cannabis sparkling beverage. And I'm curious about how much of it is geared toward female consumers, and how is launching this cannabis beverage for women different than wine?
Well, I think that House of Sake as a branded company is speaking to women at a luxurious level where cannabis isn't speaking to women currently. And we've borrowed quite a lot. What Stephanie was talking about just literally a moment ago, this idea of branding and taking an appellation, Napa Valley, using the phrases grapes grown in the renowned Napa Valley as our base liquid, which is then infused with a proprietary blend of CBD and THC that will give you like this beautiful entourage effect of body high and a little bit of brain high, with super high bioavailability, which means that you drink a glass of sake and you feel it in the same length of time that you do a glass of regular wine. Highly available, bioavailable emulsification. And so what that means is that it gives you tremendous information about how you're feeling. And so that's a beautiful thing. And then the very, very high dissipation rate. So for those of you who've had bad experiences with edibles, which has to go through your digestive system in order for you to feel it. So oftentimes people have a edible, wait, I don't feel anything, I don't feel anything, I don't feel anything. I'm gonna have another one. And then all of a sudden you're having a really, really bad night and you reach that point where you're like, I don't wanna be high anymore. And I know a lot of you have probably done that, I certainly have. And so what products like House of Sake does is it brings cannabis use into the mainstream. It takes a product that 50% of consumers consume alone and brings it into a space where you're opening up a bottle of wine on your deck on a Sunday with your girlfriends and you're sharing this bottle of sake. And you're having that same ritual, that same beautiful ritual of opening a bottle, taking out the cork, pouring the glass, doing cheers. Or you're coming home from work and you're opening the bottle and you're pouring yourself a glass and you're feeling your shoulders drop at the end of the day. Except you're doing it with fewer than 12 calories a glass. You're doing it with zero alcohol. You're dealing with no risk of hangover, with none of the negative effects at all of alcohol, and plus CBD, which acts as a natural anti-inflammatory, which is kind of healing you from the inside out. So it's kind of a beautiful thing. So finding the balance between how you're branding a product that is wine-like, Napa Valley inspired, that isn't wine in the typical sense of the world, because there's no alcohol, but borrowing from that with authenticity, with provenance, with vintage dates. All of those things bring that consumer in, and I think the quality of the product and the experience of the product will keep consumers there. And so as we leverage that same experience when we go from liquids into beauty products, which will launch at the latter part of this fall, that really have high levels of efficacy that are driven by, again, a proprietary blend of THC and CBD with alternative cannabinoids that actually add to the efficacy of the product. We're going to be standing for women to say, we understand what your needs are. If you have rosacea, we get that. We have a product for you. If you have everyday pain, we got that. We have a product for you. If you if you want some kind of anti-aging characteristic, we've got that. And so I think there's finding the balance is what we've done with this brand, and how it relates to women is really because it's a product made by women. And advised by women. And so we're solving our own problems or meeting our own needs, let's say. We don't have problems per se. So that's where I think it all comes into play and how it all works together in this kind of beautiful symbiotic way.
Very excited for your launch. So we have a general question that came in from the audience. Thank you. So anyone can answer this. So do you think wine industry professionals have an advantage in the cannabis space given their experience in a highly regulated industry?
I would say yes, particularly being in this area. You know, we're in Sonoma County. So a lot of the professionals coming into the industry here are from the wine industry. And I do think that there's a synergy between the two when you're marketing. I think there's a lot that we can bring over from the wine industry in terms of marketing around occasions. So yeah, I do think that there is an advantage from that aspect, especially in this area.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I built my whole business around that. So, I mean, not literally, but it's turned into that, where we were CPG, adult bev, and cannabis, and now we're anywhere between 50 to 75% cannabis and 25 to 50% wine in adult bev, right? And it's strictly because of that. And some of our clients in adult bev are clients because they don't want us to recruit out for cannabis. We don't recruit out from our clients. So we've actually gotten business from the adult beverage industry because those companies recognize that those of you in the adult bev industry have a ton of skills that are transferable, as I mentioned earlier, due to regulatory and being able to pivot on a dime.
I'd like to comment on that as well, because I think it's actually, yes, operating in a highly regulatory environment is very important. We've all done it. You know, we've all done it our whole careers. However, there is nothing like cannabis. Holy cow. I mean, the threshold and the hurdles that we've had to cross in order to bring, you know, my brand to market, and I'm sure the same thing with you, Carrie, and everything that we've all done is unbelievable. But what it really does, it speaks back to the women part, which you made earlier, Liz, is that it's this idea of being super nimble. I mean, so having that baseline of understanding regulatory environments and how to operate within them and sort of like skate your way through it is important, but the nimbleness and your ability to flip on a dime and be like, oh, they made that decision today? Okay, well, that's gonna cost me $10,000 to fix. And so that's where the female entrepreneur really, I think, will be successful in this industry, is our ability to be so completely nimble in how we approach business.
So I don't want us to get in trouble because we have hit time. Bummer, because we have still questions. Anyway, I really hope you'll come up and find us if you have some individual questions. I want us to be self-promoting here, and can each of you give me your Instagram handle so people can follow, or your website? And thank you so much for joining us. All right.
So Garden Society can be found on Instagram at GRDN Society.
You can find House of Saka on Instagram at Saka Infusions, and same thing with Facebook.
Great.
Honig at honigwine.com. At honigwine.
I'll be honest, I have an Instagram and I don't know what it is because it's really hard to recruit on Instagram.
She's busy.
LinkedIn, baby. Contact me on LinkedIn,
LinkedIn
please.
is where you can find Liz. Yes.
And my Instagram is Smoke Sip Savor. Altered Plates Instagram is Altered Plates Hospitality. And very quickly, I do want to plug Crop to Kitchen. You guys may have seen the raffle tickets that we were doing out there. Crop to Kitchen community is an advocacy group really trying to bring together the hospitality and cannabis industries and push for regulations that will allow. We have a winner. Sorry, we're going to just really quickly announce the winner. Jamie,
Do it.
drum roll.
Yeah, so we have a winner, and hopefully this person is in the room. So it is lucky ticket number 618253, and the winner's name is Jody Starr.
Someone's a star.
Jody.
Okay.
Okay, they're not in here.
All right.
We'll go spread the message.
Someone is a star. Wonderful. And you can follow me at My Milligram, and if you love food, which who doesn't, you can follow me at Table Hopper. But I really, really appreciated this opportunity to speak with all of you, learn from you, and please come find us if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Alicia, thank you so much for leading this conversation. And ladies, thank you so much for being here and sharing your stories. We obviously want to thank again all of our sponsors for all your support. We want to thank all of the tabletop exhibitors. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you for being with us all, for the entire day. I hope you found it worthwhile. You made some new connections, and hope you join us again next year. We've got some wine and cheese and everything still going on outside, so enjoy, and thanks again. Thank you. That was awesome.